Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And this week, PFL Europe heads over to France, and as always, Carlos and I are here to break down the entire card, starting off with the early prelims, heading to the main event. But before we kick things off, we've got a man to introduce, my co-host, Carlos. What's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And we're going to kick things off in the early prelim opener of Sofiane Aïssaoui taking on Vincent de Guerra. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this early prelim opener?
In this one here, I actually went with Guerra in this one. He can pretty much fight anywhere. He's got about 55, I think it was, pro fights. So he should be comfortable in any place this fight goes, you know. He shouldn't feel uncomfortable in any position. You know, it shows in his fights, you know, that submission's kind of his weakest spot in the game. And I'm going to go with, you said Aïssaoui? Aïssaoui?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Aïssaoui?
Okay, Aïssaoui, we're going to go with that. He looks a little awkward, you know, kind of a little choppy in his movements, but his submission grappling has been his biggest weapon. You know, some people, you know, they learn submissions, and some people kind of learn how to set up submissions. It looks like he learned submissions, so like if he can't just throw it on quick, it's not like he has like a way to set you up, set traps, and get you to fall in submissions. You know, and having a lot of first round subs, I feel that, you know, it's early, everybody's dry. They're not sweating, they're not bleeding, and nobody's too fatigued, and that's his best moment to get it. I do feel that Guerra is probably going to be able to weather that storm, and he'll probably just pull this one out, get a decision. But you know, with all the fights that he's got, you had to learn something. You know, at 35, he's still able to perform, and he's not too beat up, but. I don't think this is going to be an impressive matchup. I feel like they're pretty close in age, so there's no real youth advantage there. Size-wise, they're kind of the same size. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Guerra in this one. I think he's going to have the edge just based on experience.
I share the same sentiments you do, Carlos, about this matchup, 34 versus 35. You know, when you look at the records of these two guys, some of the performances, some of the opponents, it's a questionable one. I think this one's a coin flip. And I also agree with the fact that obviously Vicente's main weakness is obviously the 14 submission losses. Obviously, it's a path to victory that most of the opponents he's been losing to have obviously taken. And when you talk about Aïssaoui, I do think that that's going to be his path to victory. That's why I'm going to take him here. I think he's the bigger fighter in this matchup. He has fought up at 205. He has looked like the bigger fighter, slight height and reach advantage, I would have to assume here. And also as well, I think he stays a little bit more technical on the feet. I think what he does here is he comes in, he looks to get his grappling going. He's got good top pressure. I think he's going to get some sort of body lock, trip, takedown. I wouldn't even be surprised if Vincent mixes in some grappling, and that ends up getting Aïssaoui the ability to actually mix in his grappling and ultimately find the submission. When Aïssaoui does get on top, he likes to throw ground and pound. He will soften you up in order to set up some sort of arm triangle, or whether he wants to set up some sort of submission, he will look to beat you up first, just to kind of get you thinking about it before he, you know, kind of slaps on that submission. And I just think, to me here, that gaping hole of, you know, the Vicente in terms of the submission game is just going to be what Aïssaoui is going to look for here. I do think Vincent is the better athlete. I do think that when you look at some of his fights on tape, he has a good ability to be able to get people up against the fence, kind of get to a hip, or whether it be a single leg or whether it be a double, pick you up, slam you emphatically. But I've seen in a few of his fights where even when he gets on top, that he'll give up positions, get swept, and ultimately end up on bottom. He doesn't show good urgency to get back to his feet, and ultimately people tend to dominate him once they're on top, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen here with Aïssaoui. Sloppy fight, not confident in either guy. Obviously, as I mentioned at the start of this breakdown, 34 and 35-year-old, you know, respectively, opening up on a French-European card. I just believe here that this is just going to come down to the fact that Aïssaoui has shown me on tape that he can get a body lock, he can get a takedown, and ultimately dominate once fight gets to the ground. And with 14 submission losses, I can't be too confident here in Vincent. So give me Aïssaoui to get this one done on the ground. Some dissension for the early prelim opener. And next up, we have Maria Guedez Jr. taking on Kiya O'Sullivan. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
I went with Guedez Jr. in this one. Now, I don't know if you actually paid attention to this one, but it looks like it could be a pretty competitive fight. Guedez, no MMA experience, will be her first, pro fight. But having that Sambo background, I think is, it's a pretty good start in MMA, but, it is sport Sambo. It's not really combat Sambo, so she's not used to the strikes coming at her. So that's something that's going to be new in this, but she's going to have the throws. She's going to have the submissions. She's going to have the ground control ability once it gets there. But before it gets there, O'Sullivan is kind of a nightmare on the feet. She's got very long strikes. She stays long. She stays snappy. She's not the fastest, but she stays busy, and she's always pumping something out in your face. Now, what's going to have to happen is Guedez is going to have to be able to slip something and just bull rush her and get her up against the cage, clinch her, or shoot a double, be able to toss her, catch her off balance, something. And I think that's able to happen. And I think once that happens, O'Sullivan has shown competency on the ground. She's had good takedown defense and she's had good ability to get back up. But against somebody of a Sambo high level, like on her way up, she's going to have to worry about her neck and her arms and getting choked or Kimura or subbed in some way on the way up. So I'm going to take Maria Guedez Jr. and I think it's going to be a good fight. I just think it could be closer than I think. I'm going to take her, but I don't feel confident.
Yeah, this one was tricky for me. Obviously, with Maria, obviously no MMA tape, like Carlos said. She did medal over in Sambo, and it was tricky for me to kind of make a decision on this one, which is why I went with O'Sullivan, just purely because I think the experience that she's got inside of MMA and the amateur background that she's got fighting in MMA might be the difference factor here. We tend to see with fighters that come over that are just wrestlers and UFC MMA debuts. It doesn't always go well. Obviously, we haven't seen, how she's going to be able to handle the emotions of the situation. Obviously, Maria fighting over in, a different Sambo background. I'm sure she's used to high level, competitive sports. But I think MMA is a different ball game. When things aren't going your way, with a woman like O'Sullivan here that has an ability to crack on the feet, and she is hitting you. She is, kind of having the better of the striking. I just wonder how Maria's going to handle that. Until I've seen that, I don't really want to pick her. Obviously, we know, like Carlos said, Maria does have the grappling advantage. She, can get a body lock. She can, kind of get a foot sweep here and ultimately find some sort of, takedown and get her grappling going. But I do trust O'Sullivan here to keep this one on the feet and have the better striking. And she does fight southpaw as well. I think that different look also could play a factor and can definitely, kind of throw a spanner in the works for Maria. She has a nice straight left hand, which she throws very nicely down the pipe, set up well behind the jab. I think she's the better athlete out of the two in terms of speed. She has shown urgency to get up off of her back, but I do think if Maria does get this fight to the ground with the high-level Sambo she's got, she will be able to hold her down. But without seeing a whole lot of tape on Maria, I've got to go with O'Sullivan here to get it done with the striking. And next up, we have Mark Ewen taking on Sebastien De Franco. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
All right. I'm gonna take Ewen in this one. He's very composed, very relaxed in every aspect of the fight, but probably needs to step on the gas a bit. He's a good technical fighter, but I think he can get a little bit flustered when fighters start to attack him a little bit. A little bit more aggressive, like we've seen against Chizov and Pacella. Pacella was able to stay in his face and keep throwing volume. And he was tagging him, but it was the pressure and the constant volume. And with Chizov, it's just the fact that Ewen kind of wants to sit back and kind of pick his spots, whereas Chizov didn't allow that to happen. And on the way out, he threw a shot and took him out. So I think that DeFranco's actually got the same capabilities. He kind of fights similar to Chizov or Pacella, where he can turn up the pace when he has to. I just feel like he could push the pace, but if Ewen decides to grapple, I think that he could actually get the upper hand there. if he's able to clinch him and get him to the ground. So that's one of the reasons I think he can get it done. So I'm going to take Ewen with that. I think he implements a little bit more of a ground game, keeps it in close quarters, and slows down DeFranco.
Yeah, two for Ewen here. I actually think Mark Ewen's actually pretty talented. He's let us down in the past with some previous performances, like Carlos mentioned, that fight against Chizov where he got mopped and dropped early in the first. I do think he's a little bit stiff and not necessarily that comfortable in the striking. He throws one shot at a time. He'll attack the low calf kick. He'll throw shots straight down the pipe, but they're not necessarily they're not getting hit with a lot of power. He tends to be not necessarily arm punches, but he's not a guy that's known for his power. And like Carlos mentioned, that I think where he really shines is his grappling. He has very nice front chokes. He can really set up a DAS really well, anacondas. And his ability to get fights to the ground, I think, is going to be the factor in this one. I think if he can really get a takedown here early, get his submission game going, I definitely think that he'll have the upper hand on the ground. And I think that, like I said, I think Mark Ewen has a lot of potential. And when I watched Sebastien DeFranco, I really just see an overhand right, and I see a guy that can't really set up his shots. He tends to be a little bit low output. He throws that overhand. His footwork kind of is the main downfall with him. If fighters are fighting on the outside or they have good footwork, they tend to be able to kind of just circle out and move out of the power shot of DeFranco, and he doesn't have an ability to really set that shot up with a technical jab or a low kick or anything like that. He's just really looking to kind of swing once he gets into range, and I just think that the problem here with Mark Ewen is that he's not a guy that's going to bounce around on the outside and avoid that power shot. He lacks head movement, so I wouldn't be surprised if DeFranco lands something big here on Ewen. I just think realistically that the last two opponents he's fought, I just think that they're much better at setting up their shots than DeFranco is. I think Mark Ewen gets back in the win column here, mixing in some grappling, like Carlos said, takes the easier path to victory and ultimately finds the finish on the ground, or maybe rides out some top pressure here, beats him up on the ground for a decision. But I'm going to go with Mark Ewen to get this one done. But not super confident, though. Mark Ewen's definitely not a guy that I've trusted in the past from the previous performances. I do think this is a step down in competition for him, and I'd like to see him get it done here, mixing in the grappling. And next up, we've got definitely a name I'm going to butcher. We've got Darragh Kelly taking on Bakhtiyar Abdulaev. Carlos, who you got in this one? And good luck with that last name.
I like the way you attempted the first name. Abdulaev, I was pretty good with, but Bakhtiyar, I think you did all right. So in this one, I went with Darragh Kelly. Abdulaev, from what I've seen, he's pretty good striking. He seems very well versed, seems relaxed, seems snappy with some of his shots. I also think he's got good grappling. I think he's got quick movements, light on his feet. Looks to have probably fought in the better guys, like guys with winning records, in his career. But Kelly, I feel like in his fights, he's winning the scrambles against guys that are grapplers. Maybe not. I don't know what level Abdulaev is, but it didn't look like he's somebody that's going to smother you with grappling. But I think he can win the scrambles, and I think he's the hardest striker of the two. I think he sits on his strikes a little bit more than Abdulaev does. He tends to stand a little straight up. And I think he could smother the grappling, and stuff some takedowns and get this done on the feet. So I'm going with Darragh Kelly.
Yeah, this fight for me was tough, but I was impressed when I watched Abdulaev on tape. I think that this guy, I don't want to say he's the real deal, but I think he's pretty well-rounded. He's got a taekwondo style of striking, bounces light on his feet. He can throw spinning wheel kicks and spinning back kicks from the outside. He's got power in the hands. He's got a very nice timed step-back right hand, which you see him knock out some of his opponents in the regional scene. When his opponents do crash the pocket, he's got good footwork to be able to avoid attacks. I think he lacks a little bit of head movement, but I think at times he's definitely down to brawl in the pocket. He also has high-level wrestling to fall back on. I've seen him get multiple blast doubles and single legs, and he will emphasize the takedown and really put some emphasis behind the slams on those takedowns as well. When he gets you on top, he'll look to beat you up. He looks to try and pass the guard, get into full mount and beat you up with elbows and rain down shots with ground and pound. And ultimately, he looked pretty impressive to me. When you see Darragh Kelly fight, he has that lead hand very low. His right hand is right up by his chin. And he's got that kind of wide bouncing stance as well. And I think that lead hand, that left hand being very low, might help him really defend takedowns here against Abdulaev. Very slick BJJ, very, very good takedown defense as well, which is what's making this a tough one for me to pick. And also as well, his ability to really just sort of bounce in and out of range, I think could play a factor here. But I do like the Taekwondo style here of Abdulaev on the feet. I do think if he wants to mix in some wrestling, I do think Kelly's going to be able to stuff a lot of the takedowns. I think Kelly's also obviously the bigger guy in this matchup ever so slightly. I think if this one plays out on the feet, it's 50-50. I think that Kelly's going to do a good job of keeping it on the feet. I think this one could be very much a back and forth affair. I'm going to go with Abdulaev to get this one done. I think he's a little bit more well-rounded, but I do think that Kelly can pull this one off, so not super confident on my part for sure. And next up, we have Gustavo Oliveira taking on Baris Adiguzel. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this one?
Glad you said that, because I'm going to go with Boris. I'm not even going to mess with the last name. I know I'm saying it wrong. Oliveira, I think he's quick, good technique, looks for the openings, very confident in his striking, good takedown defense. He has a very aggressive style, but it's still defensive because he kind of uses his offense as defense, where it's like in some of his fights, when his opponent actually steps forward to engage, he's already throwing his second punch by that time. So he uses it to smother his opponent's offense. I think Baris is dangerous to the body if you get in a wild exchange. From what we've seen on tape, seems to be a target he loves to hit, and it's always going to be open. Relies on his speed and output, but to overwhelm his opponents. Good power, explosive finishes. I'm going to go with Boris, obviously, because I think he can stay busier. I think he carries just a little bit more striking power along with the speed, and there's a lot to worry about from Oliveira. You know, he's also very well-rounded as well, but I do think that Baris is probably the harder hitter, and I think he's going to find the openings. And it's kind of crazy because I think this is going to be a pretty competitive fight back and forth, but I actually like the style of Oliveira. I just, the way that Baris could just attack and throw some hard shots, you know, it's impressive. He doesn't need too many, he doesn't need to throw too many strikes to get it done. So I'm going to go with him to get it done in this one.
Yeah, before I break this one down, I just want to point out as well, Carlos and I did a breakdown of Gustavo Oliveira in his previous fight, and all of the tape that I personally saw on him, he didn't look that impressive, and then he came out and comes out with this crazy, you know, spinning elbow knockout in his previous fight. And I was kind of like, you know, where did that come from? He looked impressive in that fight. He was able to land big shots earlier. He dropped his opponent before he landed that spinning elbow, and he looked pretty damn good. The grappling was good there as well. And ultimately, you know, even in this fight, I definitely think that he could pull off the upset. He's got the nice step-in right hook that he likes to throw. He'll swarm you if he has you hurt. Obviously, his grappling's much better than I thought it was. And ultimately, he's proven me wrong in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does here. But when we talk about Baris, I'm not going to attempt that last name as well, but I wrote down here in my notes, this guy looks fucking nice. This guy, if you watch some tape on this guy, some of the finishes that he gets, obviously it being on the regional scene, a nice slip left hand to the body that he folds somebody with. He's got a nice kick to the liver that he finishes somebody with. He's got a nice step back right hand when his opponent gets too aggressive that absolutely folds him like a lawn chair. Some of the shots that this guy has, the timing on some of his shots are so well precise that it's one of these things where it's like he doesn't necessarily carry the most power that you've ever seen. It's just the timing is so good on some of these shots that they're landing in the perfect spot that he's just putting people out, whether it be to the body or the head. He's got kicks upstairs. He'll throw spinning attacks to the body. I was very impressed with this guy, and I think that he's one of these guys that really understands, you know, how to sort of put somebody's lights out with accuracy instead of just throwing everything into his shots. And I think you see, I'm not going to compare him to Ilia Topuria, but when you see Ilia Topuria rip to the body, or he's going for what's open with setups, and he's very measured. You see with Baris as well, early in round one, he's getting his reads. He's not just coming in and throwing something out there. He's seeing what his opponent has fighting out of the southpaw stance. He's kind of giving people different looks. He'll go southpaw, he'll switch. He'll see what openings are there, and ultimately on tape, he's proven that he's been able to find it. So I'm going to go with Baris here. I think this is a great fight. I agree with Carlos. I think Oliveira could definitely pull off the upset. It could be close, but Baris has shown me on tape that he looks pretty special, so I'm not going to get in the way of this guy's striking, and he's definitely one to watch on this card for sure. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button. And next up, we have Aleksandr Chizov taking on Claudio Pacella. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this fight?
I'm actually going to go with Pacella on this one. And, Chizov, he's impressive too. And they can fight similar. Like Pacella actually has very good offense. His pace is incredible. Good pressure. Doesn't leave much time for his opponent to counter. At that level, the higher levels he's going to fight, guys are going to find a way to slow him down, get a little respect. But right now, he's able to outwork a lot of people, and the only way you're going to do it is, to get a little bit of breathing rooms to slow him down or knock him out. And Chizov can do that. He can get respect. He can hit him with something that makes him take a step back. And I just feel that in the exchanges, Pacella is not really looking to knock you out in those exchanges. He's just kind of looking to push you backwards. And once he gets you backwards, then he starts to go to work. Whereas Chizov is going to be swinging for the fences in an exchange, and that'll actually leave him open to exactly what Pacella actually wants to do. Pacella mixes his takedowns in enough to make Chizov have to worry about it. I could see Chizov being confused, having to go from takedown, defense to stand up and getting clipped. So I'm going to take Pacella in this one. Yet again, I think this is another good matchup. I think a lot of these fights, you got a couple close ones in this card, but I think this is good. I think Chizov's one of those guys. He's got some talent, but sometimes he just loses when you don't think it's going to happen. You know what I mean? So. And then he pulls off a victory against someone like Mark Ewen. So I'm going to take Pacella in this, but yet again, it's a little shaky. Don't know who's actually going to pull this out.
Yeah, I'm going for Pacella here as well. I think I share the same, sort of sentiments that Carlos does. This is a great matchup here, and I think this really just comes down to the fact that I know with Pacella that he's going to go forward, he's going to be game, he's going to pressure, and I think that's going to take away the kicks of Chizov. We've seen in the past with Chizov that, he does have a nice 1-2, fast hands, can blast kicks from the outside. And I think that's going to be his main weapon here that he's going to look to use. But I just think Pacella's going to be able to take that away with forward pressure, really corral and make him fight on the outside. And we've seen with Chizov in the past that, as Carlos mentioned, that, he has been, Pacella will mix in takedowns, and Chizov has been taken down and controlled on the ground in the past. So I do think that Pacella can mix in some takedowns here if he wants to. Pacella throwing that overhand right that he likes to throw really also will help him set up his takedowns if he does corral Chizov up against the fence, if he wants to mix in some takedowns. Like Carlos said, Chizov's going to have to worry about the grappling at some moments, which is going to set up that overhand. And at moments as well, he's going to have to worry about the overhand, and then that might set up the takedown. So I do think that Pacella possesses the ability here to mix in takedowns. He does like to stand and trade. He does like to get into a bit of a brawl at times. He's a guy that definitely loves to fight. He's very much in your face at all times. I do think that Chizov has a little bit more speed. He throws the straighter shots. He is the taller guy in this matchup with the reach advantage. But I do like Pacella here to kind of grit this one out, maybe win a decision here. I think if he's smart, he mixes in takedowns. I could see him maybe making this fight a little bit closer by, making it a back and forth striking affair. And if he doesn't get in the face of Chizov and he lets him use those kicks, there's definitely a path to victory there where he can, kind of chew up the lead leg of Pacella, which he's very heavy on. And I do think that Pacella, fighting from the outside and being the faster, taller, rangier guy could definitely be a path to victory for him. But I'm going to go with Pacella here, mix in some takedowns, land the bigger shots, and ultimately get the victory here. And next up, we have Jan Ciepłowski taking on Dean Garrett. And I'm pretty sure it's not Ciepłowski, but we know what we call him here on the Ground and Pound podcast. It's Mike Wazowski. Carlos, who you got in this matchup?
I'm going with Wazowski in this one. I think the height, the reach, the youth, slight speed advantage will all go in the favor of Jan. Plus, Jan can hit. You know what I mean? Garnett, he's going to have to pressure him. He's going to have to create openings. And he's not that kind of a fighter, you know. But he does love to rip kicks. And he can implement that, you know, some takedowns here and there and some takedown attempts to make Jan have to, like, at least, you know, guess what's coming at him. But for the most part, I mean, I think that for Jan, maybe I'm saying a little too much. I think that I'm not trying to hype him. I think that he's with these two, I think he's just a little bit better of a striker, and I think that it's going to be a little bit of target practice for him, just because Garnett's going to come straight forward. And although Garnett does have a chin, he can take a shot. You know, we've seen it in some of his previous fights where he got rocked and just kept coming back. But I just think that Jan's got enough to put him out. So I'm going to go with Wazowski in this one, or Ciepłowski.
Did you attack the low calf kick, Mr. Ciepłowski? Yeah, I'm right there with you on this one. I think this one's target practice. You know, Dean Garnett, as Carlos mentioned, 37 years old. I think he's pretty well-rounded. He will mix in takedowns. Nice sort of tight, crisp boxing, but he is, you know, fairly short for the weight class as well. And I think at 37, you know, he's kind of over the hill, especially in this matchup here against Ciepłowski. He does a good job of being able to slip his shots and kind of fire back and look to counter. I definitely think that that's going to be his best path to victory here. Kind of let Ciepłowski be the one to come forward and hopefully try and counter a shot here. I just don't necessarily trust it. I think Ciepłowski is the better athlete. He's faster. He's taller. He's going to have a slight reach advantage. And I just think here, you know, 9-0 confidence here on a guy that's 37 years old. I just think that Ciepłowski should be able to have his way. He has very, very nice 1-2s down the pipe. He blasts kicks at range. He will trade in the pocket with hooks, and he has been caught in the past, which is why I think that Garnett could definitely catch him and, you know, kind of have a counter-striking style here. But give me Ciepłowski here. I think that he's just the better athlete. I think that the 9-0 Polish native here gets this one done in front of the French crowd. We might even see a finish here as well.
Legendary Polish power.
And next up, we have Connor Hughes taking on Gino Van Steenis. I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who you got in this matchup?
I am going to take Van Steenis. You know, he's big for the weight class. You know, he's the heavier puncher of the two when he actually sets his feet. You know, and he normally when he gets you up against the cage is when, excuse me, he'll start to set his feet and start to rip some shots. Hughes is a bit busier of a striker than Van Steenis. Defensively, is not as solid as his brother Costello, but Costello's really not even that good of a defensive fighter either. Like, you know, he takes some shots to give some shots and get inside as well. And Gino kind of does the exact same thing. So I feel that, you know, tough guy. He's going to use that to get closer to Hughes, but once he gets Hughes down to get him up against the cage, like, he's got very good top control. And if Steenis can get this to the ground, I think he's going to have a lot more success. And Hughes' game, he's got pretty decent takedown defense. He's pretty good at getting back up, but against somebody the level of Steenis, I think that he's going to kind of control him once he gets down there. Like, you know, like I said, not at the level of Costello, but he does have good top pressure. So I'm going to go with Gino to win this one.
Yeah, I agree with you that Gino's definitely the lesser of the two brothers. And I also got to say as well, this matchup is a good matchup as well. Another good fight on this card for a PFL Europe card. I think there's a few good matchups, especially if you're not necessarily somebody that knows a whole lot about PFL Europe. There's some good fights on this card. When you talk about Gino Van Steenis as well, like Carlos said, sort of kickboxer by trade. He's got a really nice step-in jab. He does a good job of fighting out at range and really stepping in with that straight left hand. He will mix in, shots to the body, and he will look for trip takedowns as well, which is not just a kickboxer. He will be quite well-rounded. At times, instead of throwing that step-in jab, he'll kind of step in, duck underneath his opponent's shot, get to that body lock, and ultimately find that trip takedown and get heavy on top where he'll smother you. He has a nice counter right hand as well. But to me, I'm actually going to go with Conor Hughes here. I think that the hands of Van Steenis aren't necessarily the best part of his game. I think the kicks and ultimately his ability to get fights to the ground are where he shines. I think Conor Hughes' boxing's a little bit better. I think he can corral Van Steenis here. I think this is a very even fight. What we've seen out of Conor Hughes is I think he has a little bit more power in the hands. Like Carlos said, he's a little bit busier. He will rip to the body and come upstairs. And he throws in combination as well. I think sometimes with Van Steenis that when people enter the pocket against him, he tries to sort of slip and throw that one counter shot. Whereas with Hughes, he will trade in the pocket and land, sort of 1, 2, 3 shots. And I think him being first and last here could be the thing that ends up winning him a lot of the exchanges and maybe finds the chin of Van Steenis. But he'll rip the low calf kick as well on the inside. He will look to mix in takedowns, but with Hughes, it's predominantly the striking that he likes to get it done with. Also, he has a little bit more experience as well with 13 professional fights to 7. I like Hughes here. I think that he does have a little bit more power. Like Carlos said, he's a little bit busier as well. A little bit more dissension here for you guys on the Ground and Pound podcast. And if you're enjoying the content, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down the co-main event here of 2 names that I'm definitely going to butcher. We have Gregory taking on Boris Mbarga Atangana. Carlos, who you got in the co-main event?
This was actually the shortest breakdown I got here. I'm going with Atangana here. Atangana, okay. He's got big power. He's quick, good movement, strong. He can grapple. He can just overwhelm his opponent with strength, power, just physical ability. He fights guys, has fought guys in much higher weight classes, and physically, expose them in the fight, being able to dominate them. And, Mr. Johnny Gregory here, I just think that, from the video I saw, he looks like someone that's fighting in the next, the next local tournament that I'm going to watch here in a couple of weeks. And not that that's a bad thing. I just think he's going to be overmatched in this one. Now, could he go in there and land the big overhand right and knock him out? No, that's not going to happen. So I'm going with Atangana in this one. There we go.
Yeah, 2 for Atangana here. I think this one's pretty much set up for a nice knockout victory or some sort of finish here on the co-main event. Gregory is just not all that. He looks like a local cab driver. I'll put it in a way that we like here on the Ground and Pound podcast. This guy sucks. Carlos is obviously a lot nicer than I am. Gregory, as Carlos has said in the past for previous fights we've talked about off air on the channel, Gregory might the only thing he pretty much does well is he walks to the cage well. The guy sucks. I think he's getting knocked out here against Atangana. Atangana, like Carlos mentioned, he has fought up at heavier weight classes against much bigger guys. Fights at 205. He's fought as low as middleweight. The guy's a good athlete. He's a great kickboxer. Nice step in, 1-2. Nice right hand. Can mix in the grappling as well. I've seen in the past that he took another, I want to say he was a heavyweight. He was able to take a guy's back and ultimately find a rear naked choke. The guy's pretty impressive. I think this realistically comes down to the fact that it's more of a setup fight here to get a finish on a PFL Europe card. The guy is from Belgium. I know that the French, obviously him fighting over there, I believe he fought over in France, or he trains over in France at times as well. Give me Atangana to get this one done via finish here against a very low level opponent. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here on the Ground and Pound podcast, hit that like and subscribe button as we break down the main event of Donovan Desmay taking on Amin Ayub, taking this one all the way to the bank, because obviously we were supposed to have Kevin Doucette, Carlos. I don't know if you saw that, but new main event. Who you got in the new main event?
This is kind of crazy because I shouldn't be putting too much thought into this. I want to say you said his name was Ayub. And yeah, he, he's a little awkward, sometimes in his movements. He's always constantly pressing his guy, just walking him down like a zombie and throwing his shots. And he throws them loose. He throws a lot. And he's very active in the fight. But Desmay here, he looks like he's the harder puncher of the two. He looks physically imposing in the ring at times, and then sometimes not so much. So this is a very tough one because at any time they can lose because Ayub actually has a little bit better of a track record, whereas Desmaya here, he could be going on a run and then he loses to somebody he shouldn't. Not to say you shouldn't lose to Ayub. I just feel that Desmay, I hope I'm saying that right. He should be landing the harder shots whenever Ayub comes in, and he should be able to defend any takedowns that are coming his way. Probably end up on top, have top control, little ground and pound. But for some reason, I feel that the pace that Ayub is going to put on him is probably going to get him a little gassed because he looked that way in a couple fights. And I think he's going to get over on him. So I'm going to go with Amin Ayub here to get it done. I actually had Desmay to win this because I feel that he's the bigger of the two in this weight class, but I'm going to go with Ayub, and I think he's going to get that done.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. When I did tape study, I thought looking at the records of these guys and, kind of the French guy on the, the main event of this French card, I'm thinking that Ayub is going to be this, heavy favorite or whatever. But when you watch both of these guys on tape, I think Desmay definitely could pull off the upset here. He'll walk his opponent down with disdain. He does tend to walk his opponent down later on in fights with his hands down, which has me a little bit worried, but he has good forward pressure. Both of these guys are very game to trade in the pocket, so I think that, either guy could definitely land on the other and ultimately find the chin and find the knockout here. Desmay doesn't have a whole lot of head movement, which is why I am going to pick Ayub. But he tends to throw one shot at a time, whereas I think Ayub will throw a little bit more in combination, especially inside the pocket with the boxing. Ayub also, I think, is the better grappler out of the two, which is why I also lean in his direction. Out of the two, when you see him take fights to the ground, I think he has an ability to have heavy top pressure, and I do think he's more live for the submission out of the two. If he does kind of get a little bit overly aggressive, though, he can leave himself, open inside the pocket, which is where I think Desmay could definitely have success. I just think this fight comes down to the fact that if Ayub wants to take it to the ground and ultimately mix in some grappling, he definitely could have success doing so. And I think he's obviously got a little bit more of a higher level of competition on his record than Desmay does as well. I think when you watch Desmay, his ability to just kind of be game and walk people down and, kind of go at them with a level of disdain that some fighters just don't have. He's always game to throw down. He's always live for a knockout. But I just think Ayub is also game. I just think he's a little bit more technical and also has the grappling in his back pocket. And as always, if you're enjoying the content here, hit that like and subscribe button. And before we wrap things up, I'm going to pass it over to Carlos. What do you want to say to the people?
Well, I know these guys don't have big names on here, but I actually think this is going to be a very competitive PFL Europe, and I think some of the fights are going to be very close, and I think they could be exciting. So I actually can't wait to see this either. So if you guys enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. If you're new to the PFL, I definitely think this is a good card for you guys to watch. We've got videos coming out this week for UFC Fight Night. Olberg taking on Reyes. We've got the Dog of the Week coming, best bets, you name it. We've got it here on the channel. And as always, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.